Jonah is a prophet in the Bible. And so, of course, he grew up with God in his life. His whole entire life, he knew God. He's Hebrew. And God asked Jonah, his prophet, to go give a message to this city called Nineveh, because their sin was great in God's eyes. And so Jonah didn't like it that God wanted him to go preach this message, knowing God is merciful and that they could turn from their wicked ways and turn to God. He didn't like it. He didn't like it. So he tried to outrun God. He tried to run from the call on his life. He tried to travel away from this city, the furthest side of the city, going in the opposite direction. He tried to get on a ship and go in the opposite direction. That's what the Bible says. And so here Jonah's on this ship, and there's a crew on the ship, and all of a sudden God causes a storm to rage, and they were all in danger of losing their lives. And so they're calling on their gods, their false gods, and nothing's working, nothing's stopping the storm. And Jonah says, it's because of me, and this is why this is happening. And so they still tried to, he said, throw me over the side of the ship and it'll cease. But they weren't willing to do that. And they kept trying to, get control in this storm, and it was getting worse and worse. And so finally they said, God, if you're really God, please forgive us for what we're about to do. And they threw him over. The moment they threw him over the side of the ship, the storm ceased from existing. And they were all saved. And they actually gave some kind of a worship to Jonah's God. Isn't that interesting? So this was a witness to these ungodly people that he was real. So then Jonah is in the ocean, and God prepared a fish, a large fish. People say it's a whale, but it talks about a large fish that swallowed up Jonah to save his life. So he's in this fish, and there he's talking to God, and there he's praying to God, and he recognizes he's disobeying God. And he's willing now to go do what God says, but he didn't do it with a right heart. He did what God said, but he still had an attitude. Upset that God would call him. Upset that he had to do what God said. So he goes into the city, Nineveh, and he preaches to them. He preached for a long time. And the Bible says it took days, I guess, to get out of that city. And so everybody heard about Jonah's message, and everybody in that city, including the king, repented to God. They put on sackcloth. They fasted. They prayed. Men, women, children, animals, nobody ate or drank anything for days. And they repented, and they recognized God as God. They repented to their Creator. And God heard their prayer, and he decided not to render this judgment against them after all. He was going to destroy the city, and because they repented, the destruction did not come against them as it could have, because he's merciful. He's rich in mercy. Mercy precedes judgment, the Bible says. So God gave them mercy. Well, Jonah was upset with God. He said, I knew you'd do this. I knew if I went and preached, you'd show them mercy. And he was annoyed. He had a bad attitude. The Bible says he was angry that God did that. He was angry that God was merciful to sinners, right? Not recognizing that he's blessed to be even in the fold, not recognizing that he made mistakes along the way, and God kept giving him mercy too. And so at the end of this passage, chapter 4, you see that Jonah's sitting there sulking. He's waiting for God to hopefully destroy the city, and God doesn't do it. God shows them mercy. So God prepared a plant. It was the heat of the day. God prepared a plant to give him shade. When God gave him shade, Jonah liked it. He loved the plant. Then after that, God prepared this worm to go and destroy the plant that was giving Jonah shade. And when he did that, Jonah was angry. And God brings up a good point to Jonah. He said, you're upset about a plant that's here today, gone tomorrow. And there are this many, I think it's 120,000 souls living in that city that mean more to me than the plant, right? So the souls were important to God. So one man's life, God can use one man, one person's life. He's thinking of the multitude who will be saved through one. So when we are missing our call, when we are not walking in our call, we're also missing an opportunity to touch all those souls. God has a plan for your life, and when you're running from God, you're also running from the great plan of saving a multitude through your life.